Shelly, the second part of Chelly and Shelly, and my hair is different now. So today I'm gonna hop right in because this could potentially be a long video if I just let myself ramble and ramble and ramble. But today I'm finally gonna be sharing my testimony on how God got me into medical school. So this is going to be a very, very, very transparent video. It's not gonna be a how to get to medical school video and you need to take these classes and you need to do this well on this test to do this thing. This is going to be just me sharing what my experience was and how I really feel like God put this career in my path and then helped me pursue it, kicking and screaming the whole way. And in that same light of transparency, this is not going to be like, you know, those essays you have to write to get into med school that are like, this is why I would be such an amazing doctor, and I just love science, and I was born with a stethoscope around my neck. Like, it's not going to be that kind of video. I just want to be completely honest, and with that, I am going to be giving you some GPA statistics, MCAT scores, etc., but that's just out of complete... I want you to have the full picture of what God brought me through in order for you to understand that I did not get here on my own. So without further ado, here is the testimony of how God got me into medical school. So as of right now, as far as my career goes, it is my dream to become a physician and use my medical education to help create global health equity. But before all this, that was not my dream at all, and now it's just something that I'm very passionate about. So I'm going to be just taking you through how I got there, starting in like middle school. So I always wanted some kind of career where I'd get to help people, but I never said I wanted to be a doctor up until college. But my mom is actually a physician, and for most of my childhood, she worked at a rehab facility. So I spent a lot of time, before HIPAA was quite as strict, hanging out in her office and spending time with the physical therapist on staff with her. And by the time I was a freshman in high school, I kind of solidified that I wanted some kind of job where I'd get to be in the same healthcare space. So I would tell people I wanted to be a physical therapist, which is great because I loved working with stroke and spinal cord patients. I liked the feeling and the energy of being with people that were kind of in their worst moments and bringing them back to where they were happiest. So I liked the feeling, and I liked that it was active, and like all the things about rehab I really loved. So in high school, I said I was going to do rehab medicine. I said I wanted to be a physical therapist. Not necessarily a physician, because I saw my mom was a physician and I saw how many notes she had to take, and I was like, I don't really want to take patient notes. But with that said, I really like problem solving. So in high school, I got into the science and technology magnet program, but I wasn't really there for the science or the technology. I just did well on the test because I like things that require you to solve problems, and a lot of science and technology and math and stuff requires problem solving and like critical thinking. So yeah. So in high school, I did okay in school. I never studied or tried, which is like crazy now. But I would always get A's and B's with like very minimal effort. And I would just do all my homework in the library during lunch so that I could be in all the after school activities. And I did school plays, I did dance team, I was in just multiple organizations, and high school to me was a bit more about having fun than getting like the best grades ever, because I just figured if I'm not studying and I'm getting these like fine grades, like why would I try any harder than this? So all through high school, my freshman through junior year, I was not doing anything like remotely healthcare related. I just kind of said I wanted to be a PT and kept it pushing. But I would still occasionally volunteer with the physical therapist at the rehab facility my mom was working at. So by the time senior year came, as part of the requirement to graduate from the magnet program, we had to do like some kind of research project. So I got connected with a neuroscientist at that hospital, and I did my research project on the effects of traditional versus robotic gait therapy on patients, which sounds really, really fancy, but honestly, it was just me, a 16-year-old with like a meter stick, following patients around and measuring how far they could walk and then comparing how far they walked. So like, this wasn't like a deep science project research thing I was doing. I was just trying to get a grade in my class, and I had fun doing it. I even remember telling my dad, after a long day of measuring people walk, that being in the rehab space wasn't like the most exciting thing in the world, but like it was enjoyable, and I liked the people there enough that like even if I wasn't excited every day, it was something I could do every day and be happy. So by the time I was going into college, I was still in this mindset. So I graduated high school in 2015, and not to be like super deep or anything, but I think a lot of my like developmental experiences were centered around like the middle to end of the Obama administration, the shooting of Trayvon Martin, the Black Lives Matter movement, in conjunction with having a family who's from Jamaica, which is, big up Jamaicans, but being from a country that's still developing and seeing my cousins access to education and healthcare and just opportunity in comparison to my own privilege, being middle class Black American, in comparison to the privilege of people who have more opportunities above me in America. So even though at this point in my life I didn't really have this like full understanding and passion for global healthcare equity, I do think like there was some foundational things being laid even at that point, which is crazy to me because I didn't even want to be a doctor at this point. So I went to the illustrious Spelman College, the #1 HBCU. Yes, and I signed up as a health science. I applied as a biology major, and then my first week on campus, before classes even started, they announced that they're adding a health science major. So I signed up to be a health science major because it seemed close to what I wanted to do. And 2 weeks in, God told me to be a doctor. So I wish I had some big grand story to tell you about the moment I decided to be a doctor, but literally I just felt it in my spirit that God was telling me to become a doctor. And I was like, okay. And I retrospectively, I realized I felt that way because he wanted me to go ahead and get my prereqs before he gave me the whole vision of what my passion was going to be and all of that. But at the time, he just dropped it in my brain that I was going to be a doctor, and I was like, cool. And so I Googled types of doctors and specialties, and I found physical medicine and rehabilitation, or PM&R, and I loved that I would still be working with the same group of patients that I'd already been thinking of. So it's still stroke and spinal cord, but then on top of it I get to do the critical thinking and problem solving that I told you I loved even before high school. So I liked the idea that I would still be getting the same group of people, the same kind of cases, the same sort of more 9-to-5-ish schedule, but with the added bonus of getting to solve problems and think critically about the people I was working with. So deciding to become a doctor was complete. So my first semester, freshman year, went really, really well. I had one of the best GPAs I'd ever had. But I hadn't started taking my science classes. I was just taking general ed courses and all prereqs and stuff. And so by the time 2016 hit, or my second semester freshman year, this is when things took a turn for the worse. Saying I wanted to be a doctor was the easy part, but then actually doing the work to become a doctor was where your girl was slipping. So all 2016, second semester freshman year and first semester sophomore year, I was struggling. Chemistry, or general chemistry, is the worst thing ever. I got straight up C's across the board in all of my GChem classes, and at the end of my first semester sophomore year, or the second semester of 2016, I had a semester GPA of 2.9.
Bruh.
I'm laughing now, but That's not good, y'all. So all of that year of taking GChem, and I was taking some biology here and there, but like GChem was where I was struggling. And honestly, looking back, I think the main problem was that I was a little stubborn. I was so used to high school Shelly, who never had to study and would just do her work during lunch and then get A's and B's without even thinking about it. And so I was too prideful to go find help, to go to office hours, to ask a tutor for help or anything like that. So, ooh, my bangs are getting messed up, sorry. That's gonna distract me. But I was just too stubborn to go ask for help, and because of that, my grades just plummeted. And so after that semester of winter break, winter Christmas 2016 was when I had more of a come to Jesus moment. I had known in my heart that God had told me that he wanted me to be a doctor and he wanted me to pursue this. He wanted me to do well. But I was not honoring the thing that I felt God had promised for me with my effort and with my grades and with what I was doing in class to honor what he had told me. So that was hard. And I came back that next semester with just a fire in my spirit. Like this is the same time, me and Chelsi, if you go back through our channel, we kind of started taking a step back from YouTube because this was the semester I needed to do well. I knew that my BCPM, or the science grades that medical schools look at, biology, physics, chem, math, was taking a hard hit because of my chem grades. My math grades were amazing, my bio grades were great, and I hadn't taken physics yet, but my chemistry grades were really, really, really messing that up. So I came in to Orgo that first day. I didn't bother going back to retake GChem because it just, based on what I talked to with advisors, as long as I was able to get A's in Orgo, it would balance out enough that I would be okay. So I came in with a fire. I became best friends with my professor. I was in his office hours. I was taking the time to go to tutoring. I was getting all the help, and I ended that semester with my very first A in a chemistry class. So that same semester, I started really honoring God with my work and with how much effort I was putting into school. He started to really start, I guess that makes sense. He started to really reveal what he wanted my passions to be and where he saw me and like what the ultimate dream was besides just become a doctor. So I remember I was sitting in class and I got an email and it was like, last minute, few spots left, for study abroad. And they did this program at Spelman where you could do 2 weeks of study abroad in the summer. And y'all, I'd never cared about traveling before. Like, if you know me now, I love traveling. I started solo traveling and backpacking and stuff, but before then I'd never even left North America, and I'd never desired to leave North America. But I saw this email and I was just like, I think I'm supposed to go. Like, there was no reasoning, a rhyme or reason behind it, but I was just like, I think I'm supposed to go. So I put in whatever countries sounded the coolest. I think I signed up for like Morocco and Budapest and like some other just like cool sounding country, but honestly I didn't know where they were. And I ended up getting accepted on the Budapest study abroad trip. And going on that trip, that was my first time ever leaving like North America. I just felt God was revealing so much to me in that time. Like, I was just excited to be there. I never even thought to go. This is the most random country ever. There's no black people. It's so tiny, but I was somehow there. And I just loved every minute of it. And I was asking about like what their culture was like, and I was asking about what their healthcare system was like. And this like spark of desire to understand global healthcare just like was activated in that space. And that had never been something I particularly cared about, even though I said there was definitely a foundation to care about equal treatment. But this was never something I had even thought about before. But being on that trip just for those 2 weeks, God really had sparked this fire to love traveling and to have a passion for equal treatment on a global scale. So that's how that semester went. I ended that semester, second semester, sophomore year, got my A in Orgo, went on my 2 weeks of study abroad, and then came back home to Maryland to do my internship. So let's talk about internships. So I glossed over what I did the summer after my freshman year, but I want to say that internships and getting them was something I really struggled with. It was always like something that was said that we needed to do. We need to do some kind of health internship, and I know there's some really awesome programs that different medical schools host that give you all these opportunities and access and research and all this stuff. But y'all, I applied to all of them and I never got it. I honestly, literally any internship or summer opportunity or thing I did over the summer was like by the grace of God and by the help of my parents. So the summer after freshman year, I worked as a medical scribe locally. Again, all my internships were at home. I live in Maryland. So I worked as a medical scribe for a few months with a physical medicine and rehab physician, and I just got to learn more about the lingo of healthcare and got to see what he did on a more day-to-day basis. And then the summer after my sophomore year, I got like a volunteer internship. I volunteered myself basically to help with research at the Johns Hopkins. Literally, how was I at Johns Hopkins? At the Johns Hopkins Harriet Lane Clinic. And so we were doing research on PrEP adherence with men who have sex with men to help reduce the spread of HIV/AIDS. So sounds fancy. I was just organizing data sheets, but it really, and then I was getting to shadow with the physicians on staff and see their day-to-day, and I think it was just more of God building this curriculum for me. Like, we say we have the syllabus for class, but like I felt like God was giving me a curriculum that encompassed my whole life to show me what I needed to know and what my passions needed to be in order for me to succeed in what he wanted me to do long term. I hope that run-on sentence made sense. But being with these people, I just learned like how marginalized groups were treated, and they were groups that I'd never just been a part of or really learned more about. And so just seeing how marginalized groups were treated in inner city of Baltimore, and like how access to healthcare was so different versus like a regular hospital versus this clinic I was working on that was providing free and reduced healthcare. And I was learning a lot about health equity without even knowing at the time that this was like a real passion of mine. So anyways, that was my second internship, summer after sophomore year. And now it is time for junior year, which if you are pre-med, you know is the struggle year. And a lot happened this next year, so I'm going to try really hard to explain the timeline well, but I'm just going to let you know a lot of stuff was happening at the same time, and God was moving my junior year. So the first semester of junior year, I was back in the second semester of Orgo, and because me and my Orgo professor got along so well, he asked me to come along and do research with him. So I was getting 3 extra credit hours added to my schedule of research in chemistry, which helped my BCPM in the worst area. Like, it showed that I just improved so much in chemistry that people were dying to work with me in research, but like it was completely by accident. So I was taking this extra course and I was doing well, and I had started taking physics, and I liked physics because it was problem solving, and math, which I like math, and by the end of the semester, my GPA and my BCPM were like solid for the first time. Like, I wasn't like, oh, I got the best statistics, obviously, because I had a 2.9 one semester, but like my GPA was where it was in like the green to yellow zone for the first time ever. But this is where things sort of take a turn, because if you know the MCAT, if you'd like to go to medical school straight after college, you need to take the MCAT during or after your junior year and apply for med school that summer, because the application cycle takes basically a full year before you start med school. So I'd always had it in my head that second semester junior year, I would take like the smallest amount of credits I could still take and be a full-time student, and then use all that extra time to study for the MCAT. But when I went to my advising appointment, it occurred to me that I only had 2 semesters worth of credits left to take. And I could reduce them and take just the very minimum requirements and then take one extra class senior year to fill up my schedule. But it just really didn't make sense to me to pay a whole another semester's tuition. If you know Spelman, tuition is like $20,000 plus a semester. It didn't make sense to me to pay a whole nother semester's tuition on the back end when I was like, I could just take my full course load now. And the reason I was ahead as far as like my credit hours is because I tested out of a couple of my math classes, and I tested out of a couple of my like language classes. So things that would have filled those credits for like a full extra semester, I just didn't need to take. So I made the unwise decision to take my regular 18 credit hours second semester junior year, in addition to the 3 extra credit hours of research I was doing with my organic chemistry professor. And my classes I was taking that semester included physics and biochem and a number of other just science, general science courses for my health science major. And at the same time, I thought I was going to study for the MCAT and do well at the end of the semester. So I was signed up for like, a class. I'm not going to say which company because I didn't make the best use out of their resources, and I don't want to give negative light to them as a company because it's not their fault that this semester I was being dumb. So I was taking a course and I was doing all those classes and I was studying for the MCAT, and a lot happened. So while all this was going on academically, God used this time in my life to really round out and give me a fuller picture of what he wanted my career goals, my dreams, my desires to be as it relates to medicine. So it had always been a dream of mine to have this big sisterhood, this group of friends of like-minded women in the same mindset, and I just always thought that I would get that filled at Spelman. And while that semester I was really struggling with that not happening, God opened up this Bible study in January of that semester. So I was going to a Bible study every week with the Go Downtown. If you're in Atlanta, you should definitely check them out. So I started going to Bible study every week, and God just used the support and the community and the faith found in this group of women to really help me move through this rocky transition and this mindset shift that I'm about to explain to you. So on March 1st of 2018, about maybe 4 weeks into going to this Bible study, I was walking around campus and I saw a flyer for an event happening that was thrown by the Health Careers Department. And honestly, because it was March 1st, like my monthly stipend from my parents had not dropped yet, and I was out of money, and I was like, well, they're offering free Chick-fil-A, so I was gonna go to this meeting. And I went to this meeting, I got my food, and I was sitting down, honestly, just to be respectful. And by the time the meeting was over, I had this like huge new dream for my life. So the meeting was being run by UQ Oshner, which, if you know, that is the medical school that I am going to be attending. And so UQ Oshner, UQ stands for the University of Queensland, and it is in Brisbane, Australia. And Oshner is one of the top health systems in the country, located in New Orleans, Louisiana. And so as part of this program, and I'll explain a little bit more of it later, but you spend 2 years in Brisbane, Australia, during the learning portion of medical school, and then the second 2 years of medical school where you're doing your clinical rotations, that is in New Orleans. Mind you, up until not even a year before this point, I'd never left the country. And I'd never cared about leaving the country. So even though I liked the idea of traveling, I'd literally only been to one little country outside of North America. And the idea of moving to the other side of the world for 2 years was still insane. But God brought me to this verse, and it is Philippians 2:13, and it is, "For I am working within you to give you both the desire and power," or power and desire, it's one of those ways around, to do what pleases me. And I'd always heard in church this idea of like, God's gonna give you the strength to do all these things, and if you rely on God, like, he'll give you the strength and the power to do all the things that you have set before you. But I'd never heard before that God would also give you the desire to do. Like, he would put whatever was on his heart for you could also like become what's on your heart. I always assumed that if I wanted something, then God was going to help me get it and he was going to give me the power to do it. But this was something, for the first time ever, I felt God's desire for me to go there before I felt my own desire for me to go there. So I remember I went to my Bible study like a few days later and I just broke down crying. And this is one of the first times Chelsi came to this Bible study with me. And y'all, I am not a crier. I'm not a crier in any sense of the word. I think I cry. I'm just not a crier, but I just broke down crying because I was like, God has these like crazy dreams for me, and I don't know that I want this. Like, I was like, why is he not asking me what I desire first? And I was just really struggling with this whole idea. But he had led me to that verse, and I was like, okay, I'm going to trust that you're going to both give me the desire to do what pleases you and the power, because as I said, this semester was a struggle, to do what pleases you, and we are going to move from there. Okay, so like I said, this is one of the first times Chelsi came to this Bible study with me, and afterwards she suggested that I check out this page by Jules the Explorer on Instagram, because she was a Christian who did a lot of traveling things, and I was kind of like, okay, like, God's clearly calling me to go see places, so let me go check out this person who sees places. And like a day after she had me start following Jules, she announced that she was doing a trip to Israel. And I was like, of all the places in the world, like, why? So I knew I was supposed to go to Israel. This is where Jesus grew up. We were going to go explore his hometown and just really get connected and get to know God better and deeper through his experiences. And I just, as soon as that announcement was dropped, I was like, oh, I need to go to Israel. Mind you, I am a college student. I don't have money. I don't have the funds to go on this trip. I probably just begged my parents so hard to go to Budapest that there's no way they're going to give me thousands of dollars for this trip. So I'm going to talk about what happened this summer later, but just know that God provided all the resources and all the funds for me to go to Israel, and I just dropped the deposit like right there, and like the deposit was like $300, and I knew that somehow I was going to need to come up with a lot more money than that, but I was just trusting that this is where he wanted me to go to learn more about him and to understand the vision he had for me a little better. And so I put the deposit in and just went on faith. Sorry if my bangs keep changing, but this is a new haircut and I haven't figured out how to wear it yet. Okay, so back to what was happening academically this semester. This whole theme of God giving me the desire and power was playing out in that I was doing really, really well in all the areas that God had given me the desire for, or God was still giving me the desire for. Meaning I was killing it in biochemistry. I was killing it in the research world. I won my category on research day at Spelman. And like everything that wasn't my original intention, I was doing great at. And things that I wanted for myself, I was struggling with. I talked about this in another video, but this was a semester where I was gaining a lot of weight. I was struggling with just things in my personal life, and I just things that I had the desire for naturally weren't working out well, and things that God had a desire for were working out great. So at the end of that semester, BCPM was popping, GPA was popping, but that MCAT score was not. So this is the one category where God just was not blessing me. And I took my MCAT at the end of that semester after barely studying, or like I was studying, but I was also I was more focused on studying for my GPA than I was for my MCAT, because I think I knew at the back of my mind I could always retake my MCAT. I can't retake my GPA. But at the end of that semester, I took the MCAT and I got a 499. And a 499 is not the worst score in the world, but it's definitely not going to be a big help in getting you to med school, especially because it wasn't like a 499 where my science scores were bomb and then like my other stuff was like flat. It was like, it wasn't a good 499. And so I knew that MCAT score, like I could still like maybe have like a 1 in a million shot at one of the lower, I don't like saying lower tiers, the schools with a lower MCAT criteria, because my GPA was still solid. So I still applied in the US cycle that summer, and just modified what schools I was applying to. But I kind of knew in the back of my mind that I needed to retake the test. And at the same time, a lot of schools, like even if you take it one time and you retake it, like in the fall of that cycle, they'll take your second score as well. So I knew I just needed to take another test and make sure my score went up at the end of the summer, and then I'd be fine. But that same summer, I still had to do some kind of pre-med school internship situation, and I still needed to make money to go to Israel. So I won't give the whole entire story, but that summer I signed up to become a phlebotomist. I was taking a phlebotomy course at night. I was working full-time. Actually, the first job I got fired from in the first 2 weeks, and then God gave me an even better job that paid more, and I had to work less hours, and just, it was great. And so all that worked out that I was doing something pre-med-ish over the summer, and I was getting enough money to go to this trip to Israel. But again, my MCAT studying was kind of getting thrown into the backseat. Like, it just was, there were other things that were taking priority. And retrospectively, and it's kind of a spoiler alert, retrospectively, I realized it was because God didn't want me to take the MCAT that year. It wasn't the timing that He wanted me to take the MCAT. It was the timing that I thought I was supposed to take the MCAT, because that's what they had told me I was supposed to do if I wanted to go to med school. You have to take the MCAT right after junior year. So I was half studying for the MCAT that whole summer, and I had my test scheduled for August, and I pushed it back to September, and I was trying my best to study that first just month into the school year, and I went to take the MCAT for the second time, and it was like they had made up new words. Like, I was reading the exam questions on the first section, and it was just not making sense to me. Like, it was just blurry in my mind, and it was almost like I was illiterate. Like, I literally just felt like I couldn't read what was happening, and my chest was rising, and my heart was beating so fast. And during the break, because you get like a little break, the MCAT is 8 hours long. You get a break between like each around 2 hours. And I was pacing in the bathroom, and I just felt like heaviness, because I was like, my score is not gonna get better. And for most schools, you can take the test a second time and not have too much hurt as long as your score goes up. But I just knew in my spirit that like I literally felt like I was somewhere I was not supposed to be. And retrospectively, I literally was. God did not tell me to take the MCAT in that timeline. I was just taking it in that timeline because that's what people told me I was supposed to take it. So I ended up voiding that exam. And I felt so guilty because my parents spent all that money to get me to take the MCAT a second time, and it wasn't right. So I looked online, and I saw that there was one US school that I was applying to that would still take my score in January. And honestly, it was the school that I had it was like my top 2 choices. I don't know if it was number 1 or number 2, but it was up there. And so I was like, okay, I can wait and take it in January. And UQ, the school I really want to go to, like, they just need my scores sometime next year. But in my head, I knew I wanted to take the MCAT at least by March of 2019, so that I could be in one of the earlier cycles for UQ, because it's an Australian-based school. Their semesters start with the calendar year instead of the academic year like we do in the US. So their timeline for when I needed to apply was a little different. But anyways, back to first semester senior year, or my last semester, because I did pile on my credits into 2 semesters instead of trying to spread them out into 3. And so that was one of the easiest semesters for me academically, just because my hardest classes I had finished up junior year in order for them to be on my transcript for my US med school applications. And so that was the easiest in terms of like the rigor of the classes I was taking. But as far as my schedule goes, I had my trip to Israel booked in October, and one of my best friends was getting married at the end of October. Or no, other way around. Best friend married end of October, Israel trip beginning of November. So I knew ahead of time I was going to miss 2 weeks of classes. And if I wanted to graduate magna cum laude, which was a big goal of mine, I needed to get all A's, or like all A's and 1 A minus that last semester of my senior year, in order to qualify. And good news is, even though I was struggling with the MCAT, God had grace over my grades, and I ended up getting my very first 4.0 ever. Like ever. That first semester of senior year. So that was really great, and by the time that was over, I was done. I had finished all my curriculum for Spelman. I had graduated undergrad, and I had gone through just the journey of being able to afford my trip to Israel, and then ultimately my trip to Israel, where God had really made me feel more comfortable with the idea of traveling, and then excited about seeing the world through his eyes. And so it was just really cool that my passions were starting to line up with where he wanted me to be. And by the end of that semester, I was on fire to get into this program at UQ. But with that said, I ended that semester in December, and my MCAT test was booked for January. And I kind of knew that I wasn't going to get where I needed to be in January to get into UQ. So UQ, unlike US med schools where they don't have like a cutoff, or like a hard cutoff of where they accept you into medical school, it's more of a holistic evaluation. UQ had a cutoff, a minimum score you needed to get on the MCAT and a minimum GPA you needed to have before they would bring you on to the interview process, and then be more holistic from there. So I needed at least a 504 for them to interview me for a UQ. Versus this other school I was applying to, I was like, I'll be okay with like a strong 502 because I have connections to this school and my holistic application would look really good. But I didn't really want to sit for the MCAT a 4th time to qualify for UQ. So, and I didn't like the idea of them seeing so many, like even though the second exam got avoided, I didn't like the idea of them seeing 3 scores from me, and then the difference between the second 2 scores being just being so minimal at the end. So I kind of made the hard decision to put all my eggs in one basket, and I pushed my test to March so that I would be on track to apply to UQ as early in the cycle as I could, but still give myself enough time and enough grace to properly prepare for this exam for the first time ever. And with that, I had to kind of let go of my opportunity to get into this other school that would have taken my second score in January, because they were not taking a score after that. But as y'all know, faith without works is very, very dead. So the next 3 months of my life were all MCAT studying all the time. I moved back home, I lived in my local library, and for the first time, even though it was still hard, like studying for the MCAT is hard, learning all the information is hard, it was the first time God was like, this is the timing I wanted you to take the MCAT. And like the material, for some reason, it was just easier for me to understand versus that past over a year that I'd been studying for the MCAT previously. This was the first time where I really felt like I was just graced to be in that position. And it was still hard. I still worked 8 hours a day. I was still taking so many practice problems and practice tests. But the first time ever, my practice tests were lining up with where I wanted to be and where I wanted to score on the MCAT. And if you've, like, I told you I'm a problem-solving math person, and so I definitely looked at all the statistics about where people's scores were the first time versus a retake of the MCAT, and I already knew I was pushing it. Like, most people, their second time, their score only jumps, like, 3 to 4 points, and I needed to jump at least 5 points to qualify for an interview. So I was really pushing and just studying hard, and I had set a trip to India. Like I said, I became the love of traveling. I set a trip to India that my flight would leave the day after my test, so I was kind of forcing myself not to push back my test for like the 50 millionth time. And I'm planning to make a video about what I ended up doing with my gap year, because I graduated a semester early, and then, like I said, Australia schools start a semester later, so I had like a fun little gap year on accident. So I'm going to talk about that just in a different video. But just know that I took the MCAT and I went to India, and when I came back, I had about a week until the score dropped, because the scores drop a month after you take an exam. And I remember it was my little sister. I have a little sister who is 6, or she was 5 at the time, and she was on her spring break. So I took her to the Natural History Museum in DC. And as I was sitting there, I just got a notification that because I was following something to notify me when the test dropped. And I just felt like the world froze. Like, I was sitting in the cafeteria of the museum, and I was distracted because my sister is talking about something, and I'm just looking for my score, and I'm thinking, oh, like, maybe I shouldn't look at my score right now, because if it's bad, this is not a good place. And like, even as I was thinking this, I was still opening up my score because I needed to know right then and there. And I opened it, and y'all, I got a 506. I literally screamed in that cafeteria. And y'all, this is not the greatest score in the world. Like, not by a long shot. But if you look at the statistics about where people go from their first to second score, if you look at the statistics for where African American med school applicants usually score, like, everything was just so stacked against me that 506 was like far beyond what I've ever thought I was gonna get on this test. Like, I was just praying to scrape by my 504. So I screamed, and I told everybody in that room that I was going to medical school because I just did great on my test, and the whole cafeteria started cheering for me, and it was a good moment. Strangers are fun sometimes. So yes, I had my score, and y'all, I felt so much just relief and joy in that moment. And what I haven't told you is, up until this point, God had really been testing my faith. Since that October where I said I was going to my best friend's wedding during my last semester of college, he started challenging me to tell people about the school. Like, he told me to tell people. Like, it's so easy to have faith and be like real quiet about it and not say anything and be like, okay, when it happens, I'll be like, praise God, and tell you what happens then. Like now isn't when I started telling this testimony to people. I started telling people starting that October that I had this really cool opportunity to go to school, and like, I still had to take the MCAT. Mind you, this is after I had just like had that horrible like voided test experience, and I had to tell people like, this is the school I want to go to, and these are my plans, and like, I'm really excited about it, but I don't know yet, and nothing's secure yet. And I was telling people in school, in church, in life. Like, I hadn't put it like on the internet, but like, anyone who even like gave me a little like, so what are you doing after graduation, like, I had to tell them about this. And like, faith, y'all, faith. And I was just telling them, and like, in that moment I felt so much relief that what I told them, like, I have a positive outcome now, because my whole family was like teasing, like, oh yeah, she's going to Australia, like, whatever. But like, now I was like, I actually might go to Australia. And then I had my interview like a month and a half after that, and I won't go into details, but like, the interview, I knew it went well. And like, you know, there's still that little twinge of doubt in the back of your mind, even when you know something goes well, because you're like, they could still say no. But on July 1st, 2019, I got accepted into the University of Queensland Ochsner Clinical School to get my MD in 2023. And guys, just God. Like, there was no reason for me to know this school existed, and the fact that this which I didn't even find out till after I like got accepted, or else I would have been much more scared to apply. But University of Queensland is one of the top 50 medical schools in the world. Like, not even in the States, in the world. And y'all, the schools I was so worried about and so tight about letting go of in the States were not even top 50 medical schools in the States. Like, it wasn't like, and these are not bad schools. I have nothing bad to say about them. If they were actually bad schools, they wouldn't be accredited. But like, they weren't top 50 in the States, and they definitely were not top 50 in the world. And so I'm getting this just elite medical school education. And then on top of that, I'm going to be going to Ochsner, which is one of the top medical facilities, hospitals, well-ranked places in the country. And like, my mind is still so blown from this, because this was literally just not my doing. If it was up to me, I wouldn't have even pursued medicine to begin with. Nonetheless, now ending up in this top program that allows me to travel the world, which again wasn't my interest to begin with, and just the levels of passion and growth I've had along this journey. Like, the fact that I am now excited, one of my biggest goals is to not only understand the healthcare system in Australia, but to look into how different populations are being treated in the country, how there's Aboriginal communities that are being treated differently healthcare wise than like their general population, and how that relates to how people of color are being treated in the States and around the world, and just global inequity in medicine. And I don't even know all the plans God has for me with this, but there's so much joy and excitement and passion for this topic that first semester freshman year, when I decided to be a doctor, like, I could never even begin to explain to you why. It was just God told me this is what I was supposed to do. And now I feel like I'm on the other side of that, where I understand His plans for me, and I'm just, well, I don't understand all of them. I understand this step, and I'm just excited to get started. So next month, in 2 weeks really, I'm moving to Brisbane, and I'm getting ready, and I'm starting a new life, and I'm starting med school, and I'm planning on taking you guys along with me as much as possible. I'm not about to be a vlogger with a new video every week. That's just not who I am. But I am excited to be really intentional about bringing you along on this journey as much as possible. So I share all this with you, these statistics, the low points, the high points, not as this is how you get to medical school, but like as encouragement. If you're going through something similar to anything that I've been through, where you're struggling with having the desire for what God has for you, or you're struggling with, even if you're struggling with trying to get into medical school, like, understand that if God has something that He wants for you, He will do it. He'll come through in ways that you never even could have imagined possible. So I'm excited. I'm setting this video as just a foundation to talk more about my med school journey and just be transparent with you as it happens, rather than dumping it on all of you after. But yes, I'm excited. I'm planning to be a lot more consistent with uploading on YouTube in 2020. So my upload days will be on Mondays, even though I'm not quite sure if I'm going to post this, because I'm filming this on a Tuesday, because I was supposed to film this yesterday, but it just didn't happen. So I'm not sure if I'm going to drop this today on a Tuesday or next week Monday, but you'll know by the time this comes out. But I'm just super excited, and my regular upload days will be Monday, and God is good. That's all I have to say. God is very, very good. And I'm going to leave it at that. That's all. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I think I've said everything I want to say, so that's all.